let's get our thoughts done on Bouncer, because if we don't get it done, then it's never gonna happen. I would rather do this on stream than realistically anywhere else. So if you guys are watching over on YouTube, I'm live on Twitch at the moment, so you'll be able to see my chat off to the right. You can see reactions, basically, you know, people agreeing, people have other opinions on the matter. Everyone's got their own opinion when it comes to how Bouncer should play. And I've played a lot of Bouncer. I guess I can kind of give like my background on Bouncer just to start things out for any of you guys who might have come across this video. If you guys are new, thinking of jumping into PSO2, thinking of playing Bouncer, so on and so forth, I guess it should make sense as to why I'm talking about Bouncer the way that I am. So I personally have played Bouncer in PSO2, and this is including base PSO2, since episode 3 of JP release. So we're talking probably close to 7 years ago, maybe 8, all the way until halfway through episode 6 when Etzwell came out. So played Bouncer all of that time, and played it both playing Soaring Blades only for a very, very long time, since Soaring Blades were my favorite weapon, and played it alongside Jet Boots for a bit as well when I wanted to really push damage as much as I possibly could. And that's kind of like my history with Bouncer from JP. Global came out, and for Global I played Bouncer from release all the way up until episode 6, since episode 6 is when they decided to release Etzwell, which was my favorite class, and PSO2. Well, I mean, it's kind of a toss-up between Bouncer and Etzwell, really, because they both have my favorite weapons. I don't really have a favorite class, more of like a favorite weapon. And Etzwell had 2 of my 3 favorite weapons in the game, Soaring Blades and Double Saber, so I ended up playing Etzwell like that a whole bunch. But circling back around, I've played a ton of Bouncer. Played it very poorly, have learned to play it a lot better, have played it very well, have pushed it in a lot of pieces of content where a lot of players have had difficulties in. So had quite a bit of time on Bouncer overall. So taking NGS Bouncer comparison wise, I'm going to compare it to base PSO2 Bouncer, of course, because that's what we have to work with. And its comparison is going to be based on just Bouncer. Base PSO2 has a ton of extra things, extra abilities and skills you can put on your units that give you really, really huge effects, certain weapons that have really specific, what's the word I'm looking for? Really specific potentials that make Bouncer very strong, that in some situations are arguably required for Bouncers. I know Jet Boot Bouncers are thinking of Serpent Cleanser right now, and that annoying swap you have to do. Some people might think it's annoying. I think it's annoying personally. It's kind of cumbersome, but others, you know, they've gotten used to it. It's how they do their, you know, top end damage, so they're totally fine with it. But either way, I find it to be a bit cumbersome and annoying. But Serpent Cleansers, not to mention a bunch of other different weapons that we utilized and specific things you had to have on your units to make Bouncer really, really strong. All of those things, we're not counting them when I look at Bouncer compared to NGS, because it's not just Bouncer. It's literally every band-aid and extra thing that Bouncer uses to become powerful. NGS Bouncer versus PSO2 Bouncer. We're talking about just the bases. The short version is, I think it's leaps far beyond base PSO2 Bouncer. From the base version of base PSO2 Bouncer. If you count all the extra stuff that base PSO2 Bouncer has with all the other things it has with it, it's a much closer comparison. But if we're talking about just the base classes, not even close. Base NGS Bouncer is far superior in my opinion. Now, NGS Bouncer is not without its faults. There are certain things that I honestly feel they really should look at, whether it's a change they make to the base class or where they look at it in newer skills. We'll talk about Jet Boots first, because Jet Boots, in my opinion, is the more put together weapon. It's the one they put more effort into it, or at least it feels like it. Jet Boots are fantastic. They have their old school identity of still being able to cause elemental damage. Now, since weapons in PSO2 NGS don't have elements themselves, they've kind of adjusted how it works. So you've got elemental explosions on PAs. They only work on PAs, but those can cause elemental downs, which are cool. Unfortunately, there's currently a bug where the elemental down decline isn't working properly in some blocks. So as soon as that gets fixed, it'll be much better. But Jet Boots feel overall, it's got good normal attacks. It has good down damage. Its down damage is actually so strong. It's the point other classes are subbing Bouncer just to use Jet Boots, just to use the skill to get that down damage. And when I say by down damage, I mean like an attack that you can use while a target is downed and not moving. It's a high risk, high reward attack. Some classes don't have a good option for those, thinking primarily like Force and Tekker. Jet Boots offers a fantastic option for down damage, even when you're considering not having the 10% damage buff from using a main class weapon. It's pretty insane. You've got Jet Sweep Jolt, which is a skill that it's kind of like your old Jet Sweep kick from base PSO2, but you just build it up and use it every 20 seconds. Feels good to use. It's completely invulnerable, so it feels super free, and it's really good. And then you've got the ability to utilize techs. You can use Bardablot, you can use Zondeclad, mixed in with the actual combat, and it feels really good to use overall. Your weapon action provides you not only a way of staying on top of your target, but it provides you a counter. Though it's not your highest damage option, it is still very, very useful on staying on top of your target, PP recovery, all those great things. Your step counter is still technically your strongest option as far as as damage is concerned, but it doesn't offer you the extra utility. And if you're aerial, it does drop you to the ground. So that is something to think about. I'm trying to think of the other things that we have as far as Jet Boots is concerned. Its PAs are pretty solid. Its PAs are a little bit weaker, but when you combine them with the elemental explosions that they provide as well, the damage is actually pretty, comparable to other weapons. It's not as high, but if you take things like Jet Sweep Jolt and what is the other ability? The down damage ability. It's Jet Intensity. That's the one. Combine it with Jet Intensity as well. It balances itself out to being some of the highest amount of damage. You've also got its PB or its Photon Blast. Though it's not always the easiest to land on an exact specific spot, it is still very strong. It is the second strongest PB in the game itself when you're looking at frames to DPS. When you're looking at like highest hit, it's not the highest hit, but it is still the highest amount of damage just because it has such low frames. So anything else? Yo, what's up, Serial? We're talking about Bouncer at the moment. Are my thoughts on it? That's really all I have to say about Jet Boots. Jet Boots are just a solid weapon overall. What I'd like to see for Jet Boots is they just fix elemental decline. That's about it. Oh yeah, and they also have a quick cut mechanic, so that's super cool. You're able to literally cast a tech and then you get a quick cut afterwards. Like they basically have the entire package. When it comes to a weapon, it feels like it's got everything it needs. The only thing that Jet Boots I feel like suffers in is chasing its target. Not that it can't chase its target, it's just not as good at chasing its target as its other weapon, Soaring Blades. Jet Boots just feels like a very, very complete, very well-rounded weapon. It has an answer to almost every situation, and I think its least fun ability isn't even its fault. Foe just doesn't really have anything it's doing with it. Barda and Zonde are super cool because you've got Zondeclad and Bardablot, and how those kind of like mix in with your gameplay itself. But like, issue with Foe isn't even Jet Boots' fault. It's just Foe's fault. So that's kind of something to think about when you look at Jet Boots. Now on to Soaring Blades. So I have the most to say about Soaring Blades because one, it feels like it just has less going on for it, and two, it's my favorite weapon, so I'm going to think about it a lot more than I'm going to think about Jet Boots. So Soaring Blades, I will say the good parts first. Soaring Blades does have a very, very satisfying normal attack combo. Your third normal shoots out, an X blade in front of you, which is super cool. The weapons look super dope. The PAs actually all have a reason to exist. When I say reason to exist, I mean like they all cover themselves. The PAs, the way that they actually work is when you press the PA the first time, it does a PA itself, and then when you press the button a second time afterwards, it does another portion to the PA. It kind of cancels into something else. You've got a gap closer that as you get close to your target, you will still continue to move past it. Like basically you press the gap closer ability and you start moving towards the target itself. After you move a specific amount of the distance, it does a large hit at the end, which is great if you can get that large hit off. If you can't, and you're going to move past your target, or your target's going to move away from you before you're able to get it, you can just press the button again and do a spin directly in place, which is super good. It's basically exactly what you would want. Its AoE ability is pretty solid. You press it, you do a bunch of attacks around you, you're able to move around at the very beginning of it, and at the end of it, you're kind of locked in place, but you do some more damage around you. Pretty solid. And it's, what is it? I guess I would call it's enhanced. But basically, if you press the PA again a second time, it switches into going into a single target attack, which is very high on damage. So if say you're doing cleave damage, where you're attacking a bunch of things around you, but you need to focus on one specific target, you can always swap it over to doing that single target damage, which is pretty good. Got a little bit of cleave, vertical, but it's not a ton. It's just meant more so for single target damage, at least that I've seen. Plus, it gives you a little bit of vertical height, which is kind of cool too. And then you have its premium single target ability, Rampaging Harrier. It's basically Kestrel from base PSO2, where you do a bunch of slashes, and at the end you do a blade rain. It's just a solid attack, solid single target attack. It's very long, so it's its cancel, or when you press the ability a second time, it just cancels in and shoots a bunch of blades out that actually home onto their target. So say your target is going to move away from you, you're not gonna be able to get the entire ability. You know that you're not gonna have anything you can step cancel, or you can step counter. You can just press the button again, and bam, bunch of blades fly out towards your target. You basically cash out your damage, which is pretty nice. Now, I will say though, Rampaging Harrier, if you are near the end of the PA and you're about to get to the blade rain, and your target's going to move away from you a little bit, but you know it's going to stay still, it's better just to let it rock all the way through, because the blade rain does have range on it. So pretty solid. Now, we're going to talk about where Soaring Blades has its faults, in my opinion. Its weapon action is kind of cool. When I say kind of cool, I mean you can use it in a neutral position, meaning if you're running after your target, if you're gliding after your target, if you're just not doing anything, your weapon action just summons blades around you and shoots them. It has no interaction with any of your other PAs. It doesn't interrupt anything else you're doing. You're even able to step counter and then shoot blades right afterwards as well. It's actually really good for that too. Now, the problem is that you can't use your weapon action during any PAs. And because your weapon action has no animation to it itself, it feels kind of tacked on. Your character doesn't really respond to what it's doing. It doesn't feel great to use. For me, because I play keyboard and mouse, I have my weapon action bound to my right click. It's pretty easy to just hold the button down and then do everything else normally. Anytime that I want my weapon action to come out, it's just going to come out automatically if there's an open spot for it. If I'm, say, chasing my target, so on and so forth, I don't have to even think about it. It just happens. Now, the problem with that is Fanatic Blade. So Fanatic Blade, the way it works is it increases the number of blades you throw out from 2 up to 6 if you have it skilled properly, and increases their damage. Now, on paper, that sounds interesting, but the problem is the only way that photon blades actually are thrown out is if you're not doing anything. You can't be attacking, you can't swing your weapon. The only thing you can do is stand still, run, jump, or glide. So for 15 seconds, unless you're chasing after your target, you're just standing in the most opportune position for your blades to land in the exact right spot. And you'd think that, well, that's cool if you're chasing your target. If you're not chasing your target, then having it up feels pretty terrible. You're just basically standing next to your target holding weapon action. Or if your target's nearby and he's attacking you, at least you can, you can step counter it, because step counter is still a ton of damage. You can step counter and then you go back to throwing blades again. I will say the nice thing is it only lasts 15 seconds, so you don't feel like you're doing it for forever. Base PSO2, its Photon Blade Fever was a minute long, so if they had made it that same minute long, it would feel terrible. But at the same time, it does still feel tacked on. It does still feel a little bit like lazy in a sense, like they weren't really able to figure out what they want to do with it. So I'd like to see something different for that change. But overall, my thoughts on Bouncer when it comes to NGS versus base PSO2 is I do like it. I like it a lot more compared to base PSO2. You've got a lot of risk reward when it comes to its PAs. You're able to deal with incoming damage, even though it's not always the way that you want to. I will say its weaknesses overall right now are mostly focused on Soaring Blades. Most of the changes I'd like to see for Bouncer are in the Soaring Blades category. I'd like to see Blade Fanatic do something different. I don't know exactly what. I don't mind that 15 seconds of you throwing out blades. Maybe they could make it so it would work during your PAs. That might be a lot of, button pressing for someone who plays controller primarily. But I don't think it's the end of the world. It's just one of those situations where it's something you might have to get used to. What I realistically would like is I'd like to have back the parry from Etwol on Soaring Blades Bouncer. The reason for it is because at the moment, dealing with aerial damage is really difficult. If you're a bouncer and there's an attack coming towards you and you're mid-air, the only option you have is to step the ability. And if you step the ability, your counter damage, or while you're doing your counter damage, you just fall straight to the floor. You don't have any height maintaining. So it's weird where your weapon's called Soaring Blades, at least for a global sake, but you're at your best grounded. Every other weapon is kind of better at staying midair than you are. And the reason I would say that'd be nice to be able to maintain your height is because Double Saber on Fighter does it. With Double Saber, you have your weapon action counter, which is great, but you also are able to just step counter and maintain your height. You lose a little bit of height when you step, but you do still have the counter damage with your counter normal attack. You actually maintain your height. And I would like to at least see that for Bouncer, for Soaring Blades. Also just rename them Dual Blades at this point because they don't feel like they're in the air at all. That's like the least of what I would like to see change. The most of what I would like to see change is something happen with the weapon action. I don't know exactly how to change it up just yet. Again, the ability for Fanatic Blade to allow for you to shoot out blades during PAs would be kind of interesting, but at the same time, how would that work with being able to use your weapon action to counter, attacks? Honestly, in a perfect world, I would much rather have it so Fanatic Blade doesn't change whatsoever, and we have your weapon action whenever you press it during a PA provides you a parry, and if that parry lands, you shoot out blades towards your target. That is what I would that's what I would personally prefer overall. Maybe find something more interesting for Fanatic Blade. I don't know exactly how that would work out with the other stuff. Maybe, honestly, maybe even drop Fanatic Blade altogether. Maybe make it so we would have something different, similar to Jet Sweep Jolt on Jet Boots, where we have like just a big hit that you do every 20 seconds. Something similar to Etwol's Connect animation or something like that you build up for using Photon Blades, or that builds up for just using regular PAs. That would be super dope in my opinion. But that's really about it. That's all I really have to say when it comes to Bouncer overall. Its skill tree is not terrible. Its skill tree is actually pretty solid. You can't take everything and not lose out on something, which is just par of the course for freaking Bouncer. I feel like the only classes that really have this issue right now are Bouncer and Fighter, where you can't really take the entire tree or a good setup for the entire tree and not lose out on like some sort of down damage or some sort of utility that's actually very useful for damage. Realistically, you can set up a dual weapon tree, but you do lose out on some down damage, which causes more downs, which translates to dealing more damage overall. And in my opinion, that's much more important. Realistically, if you like Jet Boots, you're living the high life. There's no reason for you to even touch Soaring Blades, in my opinion, outside of Photon Blade Fanatic. Every minute for 15 seconds. And even then, honestly, I wouldn't even bother. Jet Boots just does so well on its own that it feels super good. I mean, outside of the fact that, elemental down is not really working at the moment. Basically, the skill elemental decline isn't working in some blocks. If anyone's curious about that, I think they talk about it in some of the Discords, the Bouncer Discord specifically. So feel free to go ahead and check it out there. But other than that, Jet Boots is living the high life, and Soaring Blades is a little bit sad. But all that being said, I like Soaring Blades. I'm enjoying it a lot. I like that step counter is a thing. I don't think weapon action counter always has to be the best option for everything, because realistically, if step counter is more damage, then you're going to want a step counter anyway. I just feel like having the option to counter with weapon action, that way you can maintain your height, would be super dope. And I would like to see that happen specifically for Soaring Blades. Anyway, guys, that's all I really have to say about Bouncer overall. I feel like I said that already, but I could ramble on forever about change and things like that. If you guys happen to have your own ideas for changes or anything along those lines, feel free to toss in the comments below. I will say I'm not someone who believes that the game needs to be just like base PSO2. I do want them to make a new game with new things in it. So having some things that are kind of like base PSO2 are okay, but it doesn't just need to be, I want X number of Etwol abilities with X number of Bouncer abilities together because I want that to be the combined class. We still have a lot to go when it comes to this game. We only are level 20 at the moment. We still have 4 more regions. That's 4 more times the level cap's going to increase. That's 4 more times we're going to add more skills. It's insane how much more we're going to have in the game itself. So I would say temper your expectations a bit, but there are some things I would like to see added to base a bit more, to the base kit of the Bouncer a bit more, and hopefully we see those changes at some point. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I will see all of you wonderful individuals on YouTube in the next video. Take care. Peace out.